I want everyone who I speak with and try to help to have committed conversations rather than interested conversations. He's now making like 10, 11K every single month.
Yeah.
Whereas when he first stepped in, like he didn't even have money. Like he had to take money out of his rent. If they say yes now, and by all accounts, if there's enough knowledge, there's enough trust, they've been through enough content, they can't really say no, because they've been around your stuff for long enough. It's either going to be yes or yes, but. And they're the answers you want to get because now it's established that what we do does actually help.
Awesome. Welcome back to another episode. Today we have Kieran Humphreys, a great guy. I've known Kieran for a few years now, actually. We go way back. No, a few years now in this space. That is way back, right?
Yeah.
But no, great to have you on, man. For those who don't know, obviously I'll let Kieran introduce himself in a little minute. But you've been in the online space for a little while now, so I'm sure a lot of people watching this will have seen your name around anyway.
Yeah.
Connected with the objection box and Bill and all that side as well. But yeah, man, for everyone who's watching, just give a real quick, brief breakdown of whatever you want them to know about you.
Appreciate the intro, mate. Like you said, we go way back. So for those who aren't familiar with me already, I'm probably going to be best known as the guy like behind the scenes of the objection box. So I've been at the objection box since pretty much day one. Like the box went up and running for about 3 weeks, and then I stepped in to take over all of the setting, the managing, the coaching on the back end. So about 85, 90% of the revenue from the objection box has come through the stuff that I've done in the background, whether that's setting calls, whether that's DMs, whether that's closing people, whether that's managing meetings, actually getting referrals, all that stuff is the kind of the stuff that I manage in the background. Yeah.
Awesome, man. Awesome. That's I think that's a big role that a lot of people don't see, right? Because obviously you have the upfront and being like if we're being really honest with Bill's, his upfront is very upfront. Like it's very out there. Like he's not
Yeah.
he doesn't hold any punches, right? So it's like there's that there. But I think behind the scenes there is a lot more, with people involved that we don't even know is existing sometimes or happening. So it's interesting to see how that role kind of fits and how you've grown in it as well. I think that would be my first
Yeah.
question is from day one of you joining to now, what's kind of been the biggest like things that have changed or grown for you or how you've seen that change?
Yeah, it's a good question, man. I mean, I think the first thing to touch on is kind of like you mentioned there, like it's the role that not a lot of people see because it's not
Mm,
like the glory. Like everyone comes into sales because they want to be a closer because they see big, big money. Like they saw an ad, they know someone who made 20K a month or whatever it is, and that's what they want to go for. But it's a common misconception that like you have to be a closer to make great money. You know,
mm,
you really don't. Like I make more money than the vast majority of closers do.
mm,
And I've not taken a closing call in quite a bloody while now. So, and that's just come down to answer your question.
yeah.
I look at it as owning my space, you know.
Mm,
So when I joined the box, and what I mean by that is like when I joined, I wanted to make sure like this was my part of the business.
mm,
So I remember having this conversation with Bill. Like, I'm not looking at myself as working for you. Like, this is now me working with you. Like, this is my
mm,
part of the business. I'm going to look after this. I'm going to manage this. This is going to be my baby, you know, to the
mm,
point where now, if they say, for example, 2 years ago, I was like, Bill, I want to take a day off. You'd be like, what? Do you know what I mean? Because like the eyes would be on me to perform. Whereas
yeah.
now, like I could probably take a day off and Bill won't even realize because the legacy of the revenue that I've produced and just the results
Yeah.
that have come through the work I've done, there's no
Mm,
question around me anymore, you know?
yeah.
And that just comes from owning my space because I look at it as like, okay, setting, putting calls on the calendar and producing revenue, that's me. Like if I don't do that,
Mm,
no one gets it. The closer can't shine unless that someone's actually teed the ball up for them first.
yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really interesting part of the high ticket sales space is it's seen as a ladder, like as in you come into it thinking, oh, so I set, I close, I manage, then I have my own offer or whatever, and it's
Sure.
like a ladder. But I think the more that you're actually in this space and the more you actually involve yourself with people and network and understand, you realize it's not a ladder at all, it's different compartments, right? And it's just sometimes you move compartments, but you don't have to. But I think, and it I got two questions based on what you've just said. What the first one would be, how did you get the balls to say that to Bill that you wanted that? Like, but more so, I don't just mean Bill. I'm not giving Bill a hard time. I love him to bits. I
Yeah.
just mean any offer owner, right? You come in and say, I I want to be like this part rather than like I just want a job. Like,
Mm.
what made you kind of first of all like ask that, and then two, like, was it that intention straight away, or was that a bit built, or?
So I think the earlier you can set that intention, absolutely is the better. Because you think of this from the business owner standpoint, like they don't want to cycle through reps all day long. What's
Yeah,
like you probably know better than me actually, Dave. You're like, what's the average that a rep is in a space for? Probably like maybe 6 months, if that.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. A
easy.
business owner don't want that. They want someone who can walk in and go, this is mine. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna produce. You don't need
Mm,
to worry about me. Which is the impression that I want to give anyone if I'm working with them.
mm,
So to give a bit more of an understanding, like when I started at the box, like this was very much like on a trial basis. It was me and a couple other kids working against each other, could see who could do the best sort of thing.
mhm,
And this was from the beginning, like day one, I said, this is what I want to do. Like,
mm,
I'll give it my all here. I'll prove myself now. I'll show you that I'm better than these other kids. And then I'll own this space when you give me the position.
mm.
So it was very much set from the beginning because as a business owner, especially someone, who is like the A type, like very confident, very brash, like very, I'm going to make shit happen.
Mhm.
They respect that because now, if you prove it, you're good. Like
Mm.
they're not going to trouble you because they know you can produce because you've said you're going to produce. And like
Yeah,
your word means a lot because now you have to back that up. But then
yeah,
the flip side is if you say that and you don't do it, you're gone. There's no building that bridge back, you're out.
yeah. I think that's a good point. I think, it's about, I think what's interesting now, because sales set in anything like this where, it's you're living off the commissions, or maybe you get a salary, but you're living off what you generate.
Yeah,
It's what you call like a meritocracy, right? It's like the best survive. But what's interesting is it's not, because what you've shown there is it's not even just that you had to perform well. It was more the intention you set before that really probably set you apart. Like, when you say like I'm gonna compete, but when I win, this is what I want, right? Like I think
yeah.
that says a lot about someone, because I think wrongly, rightly, doesn't matter. But for a lot of my life, I spent the time. I'm not everyone who knows me and seen these things. They know I'm kind of like, let's not pull in shots. Right? I'm feminine energy, right? I'm kind of chilled.
Yeah,
I'm kind of relaxed. I'm not like a type masculine guy. But what
yeah,
that meant for me is a lot of the time I try and prove my worth by just working hard and hoping someone sees it.
yeah,
And I think it does take like that mindset switch to be like, I'm gonna show you, I'm gonna tell you what I'm gonna do and show you that I've done it. Right. Is
yeah.
that is that a mindset you've always had, do you think? Or is that something that you've built during like
Um,
this, or?
that's a good question. I mean, to kind of jump on what you said, I think hard work is just like the minimum standard. Because if you're
That's
looking for
fair.
a job or if someone's giving you a job, like, what does everyone say? "Oh, I'm going to work hard." Yeah,
Mhm.
obviously. You know what I mean? Like, that's what you expect from someone coming to work. Because
Yeah.
especially in a commission only place, it is a meritocracy, like the best survive. That's just how it is. So if you're not willing to work hard, you're not going to make it in the first place. So I think that's just like a non-negotiable in the first place.
Mhm.
But in terms of, I suppose, building that up, like my first year and a half in sales, I'll be very honest, like it was straight after COVID. I went full time properly in like February 2021. And I kind of saw it just like a job, not like a career,
Mhm.
which, no point saying I regret it because it's just how it played out. But I could have been doing a lot better than I am now if I had put in the work and actually looked at it as like a career and actually something I wanted to grow in rather than like a
Mhm.
job. Because like
Mhm.
I used to get annoyed or frustrated when I'd have a call book on my calendar past like 9 o'clock UK time,
Mhm.
because I didn't
Yeah.
want to be up that late because I was young, I was 21, 22. It's like, oh, I'm going out tonight, like I don't want to be up taking calls all evening and then ruining my day sort of thing.
Yeah.
But now I look at it now and I'm like, shit, like that was an opportunity to grow, improve myself, and establish kind of who I am earlier in the space to the point
Mhm.
with who knows where I could have been now, if I had decided to do that sooner. So
Yeah.
I think it really dawned on me probably just before I started working with the box, like just figuring out, okay, I've grown up a little bit now. Like The boys ain't going clubbing every weekend and anything like that anymore. So like, what am I actually doing?
Mm,
You know, like, what do I want to do? Do I want to do this, or was it just for the paycheck?
mm,
And yeah, the paycheck's a big part, but the lifestyle that you can have with the paycheck as well is probably the bigger part, you know?
yeah.
And in order to get that, like to live the life I could see up here that I wanted, like I had to act different and I had to be different.
Mm, yeah. Yeah, I think that's a big shift for a lot of people. And I don't know if you see this because obviously you're involved with a lot of closers in this space and salespeople, setters, every role because of
Yeah.
your position, right? And you get a lot of visibility from that. I think that is a switch that I don't know percentages, but a large percentage never make. Um,
Yeah.
and whether they should or not, it's not really the question. It's just I think there's people who want to make that switch, but they don't know how sometimes, or they tried for a while and then got burnt out, and then maybe just give up and do other things.
Yeah.
So I guess if the for you with when it comes to that side, is that something like you've managed yourself, or has like been surrounded by some of these other people? Because obviously the box has got some killer people involved in the
Yeah.
team as well, right? Like obviously Bill. I mean, Princess was on the last podcast episode.
Yeah.
I know she's involved. You've got Schroeder. You've got everyone else involved. So like, do you see that having like as big an impact, like who you're around as well, or is it all internal? Or
Absolutely, man. I mean, when you're surrounded by people who are like, let's not fuck about, like the top of the game, you know?
mm,
Like the people I'm fortunate enough to be surrounded by are in the positions that everyone who gets into sales wants to be in, you know?
mm,
So you're almost forced to operate to a higher standard because if you
mm,
don't, like everyone has days where they just don't feel like it, you know? Like I might
yeah,
show up one day and be like, oh, I just can't be asked. Like, I really can't be bothered. But then
mm,
when my phone's going off and I see Nick talking, I see Bill talking, I see Princess talking, you know,
mm,
and they're operating at just like a higher level to the level that I want to aspire to operate as well, you know. So I
mm,
have to put myself up because if I don't, I'm the one letting the team down. And like I mentioned earlier, if I let the team down, no one else gets any opportunity because I'm the one
mm,
producing all the things up front that allows them to have the opportunity to close them calls,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah. No, that's huge. That's I think that's a big part. But I think what's really interesting with your role and with setting in general is you're kind of the gatekeepers, right, to the rest of the business in the good and the bad. As in, you can stop people coming in, but also you can be the reason that people don't get past them or don't get brought in as well. So
Yeah,
this it's actually I think it's probably a bigger weight and a bigger role than a lot of people give it credit for. So I know you mentioned obviously recently you've started with the box doing some setter role coaching and there's a lot
yeah,
of different things like that going on. How are you seeing how are you seeing that part of the industry changing recently? The setters themselves. Like, is there because I've not actually that really been involved in setting. I mean, when I joined this space, I kind of fell into closing. Like it wasn't a choice. I wasn't like, oh, I want to be a closer. I literally was doing like commission only sales on the side of a job. Someone said, "Do you want to make 500 quid a sale instead of 50?" I was like, "Yeah," and they were like, "Cool, sell
so
this," and I was like, "Okay." Like, so I didn't know this role, so it's just this is kind of where I started. Have you seen over the last couple of years, like the setter role has changed, or how people perceive it, or how they're taught and things? What if we could talk on that a little bit?
absolutely, man. So I think when I first started, because I'm kind of similar to what you mentioned there as well. Like when I started, I maybe set for like a month, and
Mm,
then I was thrust into, okay, now you're setting your own calls to close. And
right.
that's what I was doing for like a good year and a half before I actually
Mm,
stepped back and decided, no, this is what I'd rather be doing, you know? Because I prefer this part of the game now. Me personally, I think, because if you look at it like a scale of 1 to 10, when you're closing people, you're pretty much taking someone from a 6, a 7 to a 10, like 10 being the
mm,
south. When you're setting, you have to be the guy who takes someone from 0 to 6. And the
yeah.
vast majority of people that you're speaking to are below 6, like they're
Mm,
zeros, you know? So for me, I almost view setting as just as much, if not a more valuable skill set than closing,
mm,
because there's so many good closers, you know?
mhm.
I can probably name off the top of my head maybe 5 great setters, like
Right.
truly great
Yeah.
setters, you know? Because everyone wants to be closing. So no one really masters this part here. But this part here is where all the people are, you know?
Mhm.
Like this is where all the money is. Because if you've got a 9 out of 10 who's ready on your call, like anyone can close that call,
Yeah.
realistically. you know.
Yeah.
But if you've got someone who's like a 3 out of 10 over here, they're not warm enough to
Mm.
even get on the call. People don't really know what to do with those people, you know.
Yeah.
It's the process of warming that up. So I think setters get a lot more respect nowadays than they used to
Mm.
get when I first started. You know, I think it's not so much, I won't say looked down on because it's always been a valued role, but
Yeah.
people have always looked at setting as, like you mentioned, the ladder. It's like, how
Mm.
quickly can I get out of setting to start doing things I actually want to do? But I think nowadays it's more valued being a setter, especially the way the market is now. I know we mentioned it earlier, like there's lots and lots and lots of new people coming into the space,
Yeah.
and there's not many great offers, and the great offers all want the best people naturally, you know? But that's because everyone looks at how many closers can I get on that offer. No one's
Mm.
asking how many setters are on that offer.
Yeah.
Not really. They want to be the 20K a month guy closing. But if you look at what you're looking for in your life, what's wrong with being a 10K a month guy who's setting?
Yeah.
That's how way I look at it, you know?
Yeah.
What is wrong with that, personally?
Yeah. No, it's I think you're right. I think there's a lot of I think the industry kind of did it to itself. I think it
Yeah,
started to, I've said this before, I think it started to self cannibalize itself by trying to like, it became like closing became the new biz op, right? It wasn't
yeah.
like a role anymore. It was like, oh, you can have a business but not have to fulfill. That's kind of what people, and I think, right, as even that's technically an okay way to look at it, it brought in so many people who were just like, well, I was told that this was what I did to make
Everyone's
money.
been sold the dream, yeah,
I think so. And then they're told to sell everyone else the dream, right? Of whatever
pretty
they're
much.
selling. It's like it's just like a big cycle.
Just carries
But I
on.
think with anything, it's like you said, you gotta look at the lifestyle, you've got to look at the skill sets you want to work on or the ones you are already good at and where you want to balance. And I think that's for me, like that's always been a big thing is like what do I need to strengthen? Where do I want to work on?
Yeah,
When with all that being said, with the industry getting filled and like it's getting obviously like watered down, if we say, so many people coming in and there's so few good options for them, what would your kind of go-to advice be just off the top, for someone who's like, I'm in like a kind of setting role. I don't know if the company's good or not, like, but I'm kind of
sure.
doing some things. Like, what should I be looking at? What should I be thinking about to kind of keep leveling up?
I think outside of even just leveling up first and foremost, I think what everyone needs to understand realistically is how much do you actually need and want to be making? Because
Mm.
even with some of the guys I'm coaching now, like I still hear I want to make 10K a month. I'm like, okay, cool. Let's break that down then, shall we? So why do you want to make 10K a month? Oh, because this and this. Sweet. So let's actually go through this. How much do you need every single month in bills? How much do you spend every month in food? Like, do you want to take your missus out every single weekend? Do you want to go on
Mm.
holiday once a month? So you need to make the money out to actually, work for not working that week. Okay, cool. What number have we arrived at? 6K. So why are you shooting for 10K? Yeah, everyone wants more money,
Mhm.
but you're now looking for this position where you can make 10K, but you're overlooking the other positions where you can probably make 6K because you're looking at this big number here. You're aiming up
Mhm.
here, and all you actually need is to aim here. Because once you've hit this bit, like you're good. You've got everything you just told me that you wanted. Everything else is a bonus. Absolutely. I want you to make 10, 20, 30K if you can.
Mm.
But understand like where your level is first, Because now if I understand my number and my level before I've even started producing properly, I can find the offers that look for that. Like,
Mhm.
is there an offer where I can step in and their best guys, or even maybe their average guys, are doing 5 to 7K? Or if it's setting, if some of their best guys are doing 5 to 7K. If so, that's an offer I can go and emulate and I can live the life I want to live. It's not
Mm.
all just about making loads and loads and loads of money. Yeah,
Yeah.
sure, we all want to do that. But once you understand how much money you need to make to actually live the life you want,
Yeah.
like you're good, in my opinion.
I like that. I don't think that conversation gets aired enough in our
Mm,
space. And I think it is because, everyone is wanting to sell their next thing, right? Like so it makes sense that we want to highlight that. But I think it's a really good conversation to have. It's great that you're having it with your coaching guys as well, because it means you're having the real conversations that people actually need.
yeah,
Because that clarity is always going to be the most important thing up front. Because I think you're right. I think a lot of people are looking at the numbers, and then I think that that in itself I don't even like, because I see people saying like just been accepted on a 20K a month offer, and you're like, how do you know? Like, what do you mean they're going to
Honestly,
give you a salary 20K a month? That's the only way you've been accepted on a 20K a month offer, right? So it's like
honestly.
I think that that leads to a lot of people jumping into those shiny objects. But whereas, like you say, if you're looking at what you actually need and like still have your goals and everything, but I think you look a lot more legitimately than just random shiny objects, right?
It just alleviates a lot of stress as well, you know, man. Like,
Mm,
because being self-employed doing this, like, fuck me, do you get stressed out? You know, like at the box, we just ran like a 3 4 day challenge last month.
mm,
Went very, very well. Like best month we've ever had in the box by a mile, which is great.
awesome.
But the amount of stress on me building that out, putting everyone in it, getting people to sign up, making people are showing up, you know, like
Mm,
I probably worked like 34, 35 days straight, like 6 7 8 9 hours a day to make sure that challenge went well. Yeah, I got
yeah.
paid well out of it. But again, like if I know what my number is, if I've
Mm,
hit my number within 2.5, 3 weeks, I don't need to be stressed. Yeah, I'm still going to work. Yeah, I'm still going to do what I can do. But it's
yeah.
now no longer the stress of I need to perform. If not, I can't feed myself and I can't pay my
Mm,
bills. It's now, okay, I need to perform because I want to carry on doing better, you
yeah.
know? But it just
Yeah.
takes that load off your back because you know you've done what you needed to do already.
Yeah, I think it takes you out of that scarcity thought process as well, doesn't it? And puts you back into
100%.
that calmness. Because I think anything to do with sales related and people related, if you're scarcity and you're like trying to push people down the funnel and you're trying like that's just never going to end well, right?
Nah.
So it's always good to come from that point. Um, okay, that's cool, man. I like that. I mean, yeah, I like that. I like that topic. I think that's really, really cool. What one thing I'd like to double back onto is where you talked about getting people from 0 up to 6, like that
Sure.
whole conversation. First of all, what is it about that you enjoy? Like, what is it about having those sort of conversations and getting people interested and committed makes you like excited?
Sure. I think it's just a skill set that I think it just helps to take you further, you know? And what
Mm,
I mean is when you have people who are showing up to like your triages or they're showing up to like your sales calls, like they're already kind of there because they've committed at some point in the process. Like they've committed to show up to a call. Whereas the people taking them from a 0 to a 6, like, yeah, they might have shown some interest and joined your Facebook group or something, but there's no level of commitment to actually making any steps further than that, you know?
mm,
And I think if you can bring someone to a point where they actually want to take that first step of commitment, that's so undervalued, you know?
mm.
Because
Yeah.
as you know as well, Davey, like in order to get to the big commitment, you got to make the little commitments all the way along the way. So
Yeah.
if you have a skill set of where you can effectively and efficiently bring someone from a 0 to a 5 or a 6, where they can have that first commitment of actually, you
Mm,
know, let's say they want to get on a triage, or let's say they're gonna, you know, speak to someone on the team, whatever it may be, that allows the rest of the sales process to happen. You know, without that warming up period, this
mm.
person just stays with 0 forever, and they're just a
Yeah.
lead in the group that goes cold.
Yeah. Yeah. So that being able to get people back onto their like taking those steps in that journey, because not a lot of people do commit in life generally, do they, to the things they said they wanted to do. So I
Yeah,
guess like helping people actually take those steps probably is like just from a selfless point of view, is like kind of exciting, right? And being able to see that and be like, I was
100%.
part of that. And I bet there's a lot of people in the industry now that you can look back and go like, yeah, I remember you. Like,
Honestly, it's like one of my favorite ones. Good guy, he's still in a space now. Sean Brady. I remember first speaking to him, and he was like, "Okay, I really want to do this. I've not really got the money, so I'm going to take the money out of my rent. I'm just not going to tell my girlfriend." I was like, "What the fuck?" I was like, "Boy, don't break up with your girlfriend over this." Stepped into family, started doing well. Stepped up into elite, started doing well. He's not with us anymore, but he's now making like 10, 11K every single month.
yeah,
Whereas when he first stepped in, like he didn't even have money. Like he had to take the money out
yeah,
of his rent. So looking back on someone like that, like that's it's like the
yeah.
proud dad moment. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, look at
That's
him, he
it.
done it, he made it, you know, to the point
Yeah,
where he was like worried about his girlfriend finding out they used the rent money, you
yeah,
know. So like it is that proud moment to be like, I've influenced someone in that way. Like
yeah.
almost from like a selfish standpoint, like I screenshot anytime I get a message like that, and I've got like a
Mm,
folder in my phone. So like if I'm having a day, I'll look back through that and be like,
mm.
yeah, like I'm helping people, like I'm making a difference.
Yeah, that's huge, man. That's a good way to look at it as well, and be able to like self-regulate through that, because we all have our good and bad days in this space, right? It's so you're not in control a lot of that side of things sometimes. So having that things you can look at and the control you can look at. But yeah, you've got one hell of a track record, that's for sure, mate. We-
I think so.
That's awesome, man. It really is. And then that skill set then of taking someone from 0 to 6, is that have you always kind of naturally been able to have those sort of conversations? Not obviously in the same context, but have you been that type of personality, you know, before this, or is this something you've really had to work on and build on?
Um, I would say it's more of a developed skill set,
Okay.
personally. Like
Yeah.
before sales, especially when I was younger, like I was a very, very like timid kid, like
Right.
really quiet, didn't really speak to people. Like obviously you've met me in person, Dave, so like I'm not as much like that anymore. Um, but like that is something I've kind of grown towards, and I think
Mm.
sales has really helped with that, just from the amount of people that you speak to, like
Yeah.
I don't really think sales you can afford to be a shy person. Yeah, like there's always going to be an element of like introvertedness or extrovertedness, whatever. But in
Mm.
terms of being purely shy, I don't think you can really afford to. Like you have to be the person who's willing to have the hard conversations. Because if you're not willing to, how can you ever help that person in front of you? Because that's what the conversations that they need to have.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. 100%. I think that's a good that topic of, having the tough conversations or getting the level of commitment, or anything where it's like that level rather than just a conversation. I think you said it before we started recording, was taking people from an interested conversation to a committed conversation. I think
Yeah.
that's a really important thing that, again, a lot of people, because we've learned different things or tried different things, it's not a natural conversation, I think, for a lot of people. So
Hmm.
having that skill set's like huge. So for you, like you know if you were looking at someone who was setting and they were just kind of having just general conversations and kind of things like that, what would you want to be telling them? Like, what would you be saying to them to be thinking differently, or doing differently, or because let me step one back. Sorry, this is a long way of asking the question, but on a closing call, right? I know that I'm going to ask certain questions, or I'm going to go deep at certain parts. I can feel that energy. We're talking one to one. I've got their, if you're on camera, you can see their body language, right? Like there's a lot of the job's done for me. I've just got to be switched on enough to see,
Sure.
right? Whereas a lot of setting is like text, right? Or like messenger or things
Yeah.
like that. So how are you kind of helping, or what would you say to someone who's like doing this? How do you judge when to jump to that level of conversation, or do you just start there? Like, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think a lot of setting helps with the amount of content and the amount of like knowledge this person has on you already, because to kind of go back to what we was talking about before the recording started, like I want everyone who I speak with and try to help to have committed conversations rather than interested conversations. Because most setters and even just most sales reps get taught when they're bringing a conversation to the point where they're going to offer a call or offer the next call or whatever it is, they'll get, okay, this is like the general idea and the goal of what they're looking for. This is where they're at now. This is the gap. This is what they feel needs to close the gap. Like that is the general setting conversation, which is fine. Like now you can book that person, you ticked every box. But there's no actual belief and commit. Like all you've done is had a conversation. There's no belief and commitment that what you're doing will actually help them to get to where they want to go,
Mhm.
which is what I think is the level of commitment that you need to have before giving that next step. Because even when you're closing, when you're handling objections, someone tells you want to think about it, give everyone away this for free, bill it, tell me off. But as you know already, Dave, like first thing you say when someone gives you a think about objection, yep, absolutely fine, man. I can respect you want to go and think about it. Before you do that, can I just ask, do you believe that what we've gone through today can actually get you to your goals? Yes, I do. And the reason you do it like that is because now there's agreement that what we do actually helps. Like it actually will solve their goals. So now we have permission to objection handle and deal with them. So I wanted to take that and think, how can I adopt that as part of the setting process? Because that just makes sense.
Mhm.
I want to know that what I do actually helps before I put them onto that conversation. So that's
Mm.
the question I adopted. Like, if I'm offering people calls, I'll be like, do you feel like that conversation will be helpful? Do you
Mm.
feel like that will help you get to your goals? If they say yes now, and by all accounts, if there's enough knowledge, there's enough trust, they've been through enough content, they can't really say no, because
Yeah.
they've been around your stuff for long enough. It's either going to be yes or yes, but. And they're the
Mm.
answers you want to get because now it's established that what we do does actually help. So if they say yes, but I've got permission to objection handle
Mhm.
because by saying yes, the next logical step is to book that call in or to
Yeah.
take the next commitment, whatever it is, because they've agreed that what I do actually helps. And now that agreement is there, now we can actually have a committed conversation rather than
Mhm.
interested. Like, I would rather have four people speak to me and tell me, yes, I believe what you do helps, and then book them four people, than have 10 conversations with people who they all book, but there's been no level of commitment established. Because I
Yeah.
know for a fact these four people, they're showing up.
Yeah.
These 10, who knows? They might show up, but if they do show up, have they done the homework? Are they actually ready to make a change? Like, we don't know until we have that conversation. But
Mhm.
these four, 9 times out of 10, they've got to do everything that's required of them because we've established already that, okay, what we do actually helps them to get to where they want to go.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a really powerful like shift in conversation, like from interested to committed. And I think a lot of people would benefit massively from understanding how to do that more. The one thing I'd be curious on about that is when people are, trying that, or when you were discovering how to do this yourself, like obviously you've built this yourself and kind of gone through it.
Yeah.
Do you run a risk? And this may not matter, it probably offer dependent, but do you run a risk of suddenly becoming like an educational person, like if you go too far into trying to make sure it fits them, or is that more done on like how you ask if the conversation's one worth having? Like, do you see what I mean by that?
I do see what you mean, yeah. I think it will be more offer dependent, but I
Mhm.
also think it's going to be just the level of education they've had before you've had the conversation or while you're having the conversation as well.
Mm.
Because your setting conversation, same as your sales conversation, like it shouldn't be education based. It should be
Mm.
purely commitment based. Like no
Mhm.
matter what comes up, I want to bring it back to commitment. So even
Mm.
if they are asking about like the content and the training, etc., you want to move it away from that and bring it back to, but are you committed to achieving your goal? Yes, I
Yeah.
am. Do you feel like what we've gone over or what you've seen of me can actually help you to achieve your goal? Yes, I
Mm.
do. Again, now we've got back to the yes, I do believe that what you do helps. So it's back on the commitment rather than anything else. But again, I think as a setter, if you don't have it already, make sure your influencer's got lots of content, like lots of training, lots of stuff that they can see so that it just helps you make your life easier. Like,
Yeah.
because if your training and content can bring someone from a 0 to a 3, and then the setter they have to do is bring it from a 3 to a 6, rather than from
Yeah.
a 0 all the way to a 6.
Yeah. I think that there's a lot of offers I know, and a lot of people who are like in setting roles and things where it's literally from maybe, an ad where you download a PDF or something to read through, and
Yeah,
then they're suddenly being called by the setter. So you have like, because there's different like remits of setters, right? Like you have the
for
people
sure.
who are outbound calling, you have the messaging people and that. And I do think a lot of the heavy lifting has been left to setters in our
Hmm.
industry. Um, and like where the marketing should have really helped, or the resources is just not really, that infrastructure's not been given to them. Do
Yeah.
you see that a lot with setting and those sort of roles? Not obviously not in your role, but I mean when you're working with people, is that something that you help them work through? How can we help they offer get resources out there, or what would you talk on that?
Absolutely. Yeah. So what I like to do and what I used to do when I used to do a lot of outbound calling myself back when I was still very much like in the trenches every single day is I used to build out almost my own process for it. So
Mhm.
if the team had like some training that they weren't sending out, or like there was
Mm.
like internal wins or internal client wins, or there was like a specific thing that we brought out that was helpful, I would set up almost like my own content process for these people. So
Right.
back when I used to like cold call contractors, it would get to the point where other people in the team were like doing 200 outbound a day, pretty much, to book
Mhm.
like five people. But
Mhm.
because I built up like this content machine, and I won't take all credit for it, there's another guy that really helped build it out as well. But because we built up this content machine where every like 10 days they'd get a new piece of content, And I'm now oscillating between giving them content and following up on the content rather than just ringing them for the sake of ringing them. I'm oscillating between I've given you value, what do you think of the value? I've given you value, what do you think of the value? To the
Mm.
point where I'm now booking 8, 9, 10 people a day, but I'm only doing like 50 outbound because
Mm.
I've built up this thing. Every time they speak to the company, they're speaking to me. They're not no longer speaking to construction contractor help.
Yeah.
They're speaking to, this is Kieran. He don't leave me alone. I'm either going to book a call or I'm just going to block him. And if he blocks him, then move on to the next person. It is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
So
that's a good. I think that takes initiative and takes like skill set in itself. Even just, I think there's a lot of people who would be like, the owner should have already done this and things. But I think like, you
yeah,
know what I
but
mean?
you have to look at yourself as the business owner
Mm.
realistically when you're in this space, because you're the one paying your bills. You're the one who's got to pay your tax. Like the business owner's giving you, like they're almost giving you the vehicle, but you're the one who's got to drive the vehicle.
Yeah.
Like if you can't drive, you're fucked pretty much.
Yeah. No, definitely. I think it's a real good. It's good to air that and show that that is something that you should be doing if it's not already there, or even if it is, how to do it better and just take responsibility. I think that's a lot. I don't think that's given out a lot in this industry either. I think we still, again, we look for the thing that's going to work for us rather than where we can work well. And I think that's something you've done really well here. And in our conversations, you've highlighted where you've worked well. So it's like, you still need to be in a good environment. You still need that stuff there, but it's still your responsibility as well. I think
Yeah.
that's a huge thing. So I think, it's good that you can see that as well. Um, I had a I had another question. Oh, is it? I want to get your view on this. And again, I'm sure it's offer dependent and there's no like black and white, but is it a cardinal sin for a setter who's a setter and that's their role to try and set their own calls and take closes on as well? Like to see if maybe they've got closers who aren't closing on their offer and they're setting good sets or they feel they are, and it's not, they're not converting, so they're kind of like struggling. Is it okay, wrong? It's sometimes, to go, I'll set theirs, and then if I keep outbounding, I'll also set some for myself and try and do that. What's your views on that?
So I don't think it's a cardinal sin though, because ultimately most people want to go from setters to
Mhm.
closing. You know, if you can prove yourself beforehand, absolutely do it. Now, the caveat with that is don't just start setting yourself all these calls that the closer could have probably closed. Like
Yeah.
if you've got people who you're speaking with and you're like, this guy's an 8 out of 10, give it to your closer. But if you're speaking to someone, yeah, they're kind of interested. You looked at your closer's calendar, he's got 6 calls on today already. If they're like a 6 out of 10, go for it. Because then if you perform and you bring that person in, who's going to tell you off?
Mm.
The business owner's not going to say, oh, don't do that. Don't you dare close that deal.
Yeah.
They're going to be like, fair play, well done. Like in the early days of the ejection box, one of the first things I've done, and I recommend all setters to do this, whether you're doing outbound, whether you're doing DMs, whatever it is, I asked for Stripe access straight away.
Mm.
I was like, can I just have Stripe access just in case? The amount of people I've closed over DMs, the amount of people I've
Crazy.
closed over text, like wild, like literally wild. But if I didn't ask for Stripe access, every single time I've had to do that, I'd have gone, hey, Bill, can you send this guy a link? Hey, Bill, can you
Mm.
send this guy a link? And the difference between saying to the business owner, hey, can you send this guy a link?
Mm.
And then you going, hey, I've just spoken to this guy. I've taken 10 grand off him. Here's a sales form.
Mm.
Because now it's like the business owner knew compared to where the fuck did that come from? So
Mhm.
now it looks like you're working all your own leads in the background. And that's so much more impressive than having to ask for permission to do it first. So I recommend everyone, if you haven't got Stripe access or payment processor access, make sure you've just got it just in case. Because then when you can put through that sale, when it does show up, how much better do you look now? You know?
Mm. Yeah. I think that's a great thing to have on there. Yeah, I like that. I like that. Cool, man. Well, I know we're coming up to the end of the hour. I could probably keep talking to you about this sort of stuff for another couple. It's really fascinating to see again, like how much you've taken this role on and how much you've made, something from it, which again, just from where you started to where you are now is like a huge change as well, right? Like,
Yeah,
from when we met a few years ago and, where you are now, like it's just grown so much. So like it must be, first of all, it must be really cool for you to see that, but also just to let you know, like obviously, but we see that too. You know what I mean? And for
yeah,
someone who you don't put yourself out there much, like I know your name is known a lot as well. So like, just to let you know, keep doing the good stuff. But no, this has been fascinating, man. And obviously with, coaching setters and things like that, that's obviously a growing part of everything that's going on.
yeah,
Anyone who found this conversation like really interesting or, has these sort of questions and wants to find out more, what I'll do is I will put, it's up to you. I can either put your profile, the box free group, or both links into the description of this for them so they can at least contact you or find out more about things because I think you're doing some things here that a lot of people need. And I think, like you said, there's a lot of people who think they should become closers, but they don't really want to. They just think that's where they should go. And I think it's really good to have a voice that's saying like, stick with a skill set that you can still earn more money from, live a lifestyle that suits you, and you enjoy it. I think that's
yeah.
more important. So I'm really
100%.
glad that you've kind of put that out there.
For sure. Like I think obviously I'm more than happy. If people want to message me, like put my profile link. I'm always very active on Facebook. Don't use Instagram, but if you want to hit me up on Facebook, absolutely. Obviously, most people will know me from the box anyway. So if you're not in there, that is just everything you could ever possibly need in terms of being a successful salesperson, you know? But to circle back to something we mentioned earlier, kind of, I suppose, kind of to end off on is like really understand what you're looking for out of being in sales. Like how much money do I need to make? What kind of hours do I want to work? Like, what does life look like? Because for me, like, if I was like, I want to make more money, I would go back into closing if I was just driven about money. But I know the caveat of that is obviously I'm in the UK. I would have to be taking calls until what, 1, 2, maybe 3 a.m. in the morning, which me for my life, like, I don't really want to do. Like I probably work now until like 9, half 9 in the evening, which yeah, for a lot of people is still quite late, but I start my day at like 12, half 12, you know? But I've got the freedom and the autonomy for the rest of the day, like the weekend, like if I want to finish early, I can finish early because that's just the position I've built myself into now. Whereas with closing, maybe you don't get that, you know? So that's not me
Yeah.
saying don't be a closer, because if you want to make that kind of money, absolutely be a closer, but just have a real think about like, okay, what's the kind of life I want to live here? Like, do I need to be making 20, 30, 40K a month? Or can I make like 7, 8, 9, 10 and still live the life I want to live?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's great. And I think a lot of people need to have that reality check because we're
Yeah,
sold so much that you need to be driven for the money. And for some people, that's why they then start to hate what they do because that's not what they're
absolutely.
actually driven by, right? It's lifestyle, it's different things. So,
Yeah,
no, that's awesome, man. Well, I appreciate your time on this. This has been great, and um, I think a lot of people are going to get a lot of good value from this because there's a lot of just practical things there that they can take away. So, no, it's been awesome, man, and definitely have you back
appreciate
on.
having me on, man. Thank you.